Anxious attachment no more. Escape the insecurity cycle, quiet the worry, build secure, lasting love, and find the inner peace you've been searching for, by Daphne Reyes. Introduction. The infant's hunger for its mother's love and presence is as great as its hunger for food. In 1952, a group of doctors and nurses sat in a dark room in London. They were watching a film. On the screen, a 2-year-old girl named Laura was sitting in a hospital bed. She was there for a simple surgery. In those days, hospitals had very strict rules. Parents were only allowed to visit their children for 1 hour a week. The doctors thought this was best. They believed that if parents stayed too long, the children would get spoiled. They thought that as long as the child was fed and kept clean, they would be fine. But the film showed something very different. As the days went by, Laura changed. At first, she cried and screamed for her mother. She reached out her arms to every person who walked by. This was her protest. She was fighting to get her mother back. But her mother didn't come. Eventually, Laura stopped screaming. She became very quiet. She sat still and stared at the wall. When her mother finally did visit, Laura didn't run to her. She turned her face away. She had given up. The people watching the film were shocked. Some of them cried. They realized they had been wrong for a very long time. A child didn't just need food and a clean bed. A child needed to feel safe. They needed to know that the person they loved would come back. This film changed the way hospitals worked forever, but it did something even bigger. It helped a man named John Bowlby prove that our need for connection is a matter of life and death. The invisible chain. You might not be a 2-year-old in a hospital bed anymore, but that feeling of, where did they go, never really leaves some of us. If you are reading this, you probably know exactly how Laura felt. You know the panic that rises in your chest when a partner doesn't text back. You know the way your heart beats faster when you think someone is pulling away. You know the drop in your stomach when a conversation feels just a little bit off. For a long time, people might have told you that you are too much. They might have said you are too needy or too sensitive. You might have started to believe them. You might have spent years trying to be smaller, trying to hide your feelings, or trying to be perfect so that people won't leave you. But here is the truth. Your braid is not broken. You are not crazy. What you are feeling is a biological survival skill. Thousands of years ago, if a human was left alone, they wouldn't survive. We needed the group. We needed our person. For you, that smoke alarm in your brain is just very, very sensitive. It is trying to protect you from the pain of being left behind. The problem is that the alarm is going off when there is no fire. It goes off during a late text. It goes off during a quiet dinner. It goes off when your partner is just tired from work. This book is about learning how to turn down the volume on that alarm. It is about moving from a life of survival love to a life of thriving love. You are going to learn how to stop being an emotional detective who spends hours looking for clues that someone is leaving. Instead, you are going to become your own anchor. The weight of the wait. In a quiet apartment in Chicago, Sarah Jenkins is living through her own version of Laura's story. It is 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Sarah is 34 years old. She is smart, she is successful at her job in advertising, and she has a group of friends who adore her. But right now, none of that matters. Sarah is sitting on her couch, lit only by the blue glow of her phone. She is staring at a text thread with a man named Mark. They have been dating for 2 months. He is kind, he is funny, and for the first time in a long time, Sarah feels like she can breathe when she is around him. But Mark hasn't texted back in 4 hours. Sarah sees 3 gray dots appear on the screen. He is typing. Her heart leaps. She holds her breath. Then the dots disappear. The silence feels like a physical weight. Sarah starts to play back every word she said during their date the night before. Did she talk too much about her work? Did she sound too eager when she suggested they see that movie next weekend? She checks his last seen status. He was online 10 minutes ago. If he was online, why didn't he reply to her? Her brain starts to spin a story. He is bored of me. He realized I'm too much work. He is talking to someone else. He is going to leave. Sarah's chest feels tight. She feels like she needs to do something, anything, to make this feeling go away. She picks up the phone and starts to write a long text. She explains why she said what she said. She asks him if everything is okay. Then she deletes it. She feels ashamed. She doesn't want to look crazy. But the pressure keeps building. Finally, she sends a short, sharp message. Guess you're too busy to talk. Good night. The second she hits send, she feels a tiny bit of relief. She has protested. She has thrown a stone into the water to see if it makes a splash. But 10 minutes later, the shame returns. Now she is worried that her mean text will be the reason he leaves. She stays awake until 3 a.m., checking her phone every time she rolls over. Sarah is stuck in the cycle. She is a digital vigilante. She is using all of her energy to try to control something she can't control, another person's feelings. She wants peace, but she is looking for it in the wrong place. She is looking for it in Mark's phone instead of inside herself. A new blueprint. This book is the map that Sarah and you need to get out of that cycle. We are going to look at why we do these things. We aren't going to just talk about feelings. We are going to look at the science of the human heart. We will walk through the halls of history to see how we learn to love. We will meet Mary Ainsworth, who traveled all the way to Uganda to watch how mothers held their babies. She discovered that sensitivity is the secret code of security. We will meet Viktor Frankl, who survived the darkest places on earth and found that the one thing no one can take from us is our ability to choose how we react. You are going to learn about attachment theory. This is the idea that we all have a blueprint in our minds for how relationships work. Some of us have a secure blueprint. We believe people are generally good and will stay. Some of us have an avoidant blueprint. We believe people are too close and will hurt us, so we pull away. And some of us, like Sarah, and perhaps like you, have an anxious blueprint. We believe that if we don't hold on tight, the people we love will disappear. The good news is that blueprints can be redrawn. Your brain is plastic. This means it can change. You can build new paths in your mind. You can learn how to feel a trigger and not react to it. You can learn how to give yourself the comfort you are currently begging others to give you. By the end of this journey, you will know how to stop the overthinking loop that keeps you up at night. Speak your needs clearly without feeling like a burden. Tell the difference between a partner who is busy and a partner who is unavailable. Find the sacred pause between a feeling and a protest behavior. Build a secure base within yourself so that you are okay whether a text comes or not. The promise of the secure base. Imagine for a second what your life would look like if you weren't afraid. Imagine waking up and knowing that you are enough, exactly as you are. Imagine being in a relationship where you don't have to detect anything. When your partner is quiet, you don't think they are leaving. You think they are just tired. When you have a conflict, you don't think it's the end of the world. You think it's just a conversation. This isn't a fairy tale. It is a way of being. It is called being secure. A secure person is like a kite with a very strong string. They can fly high and far. They can explore the world. They can take risks. They can do these things because they know that the person holding the string is steady. They have an anchor. Right now, you might feel like a kite with a broken string, tumbling through the wind. Or maybe you feel like you are the one holding the string so tight, your hands are bleeding. This book is going to teach you how to be both the kite and the anchor. You are going to see Sarah change. You will see her move from that dark apartment in Chicago to a place where she can put her phone in a drawer and go to sleep. You will see her learn to say no and I need without her voice shaking. We will look at the habits of people who have been married for 50 years and still look at each other with kindness. We will look at the love lab, where scientists coded every smile and every frown to find the secret to lasting love. But most importantly, we will look at you. This is not a quick fix. It is a transformation. It requires you to look in the mirror and be honest about the ways you have been hurting yourself while trying to find love. It requires you to be brave enough to be vulnerable. As Carl Sagan once said while looking at a photo of Earth from deep space, everything we know and everyone we love is on a tiny, fragile speck. Our time here is short. We only have each other. The security you are looking for must come from a place of kindness and preserved dignity. It starts with how you treat yourself. The door is open. The path is ready. It is time to stop chasing and start arriving. Chapter 1. Why do we crave what crushes us? Dr. Aris sat in a small wooden chair in the corner of his garden, surrounded by plants that seemed to grow in ways they shouldn't. Some leaned far away from the sun, tucked into the shadows of larger bushes. Others wrapped their vines so tightly around the fence that they were actually choking their own stems. He spent his afternoons tending to these confused plants with a patience that felt almost holy. He was a man who had spent 40 years listening to the stories of broken hearts. And now, in his retirement, he saw those same stories playing out in the dirt. One afternoon, he pointed to a specific flower that was struggling to bloom. It was a bright red poppy, but it was growing underneath a heavy stone bench where the light barely reached. Instead of moving toward the open field of sunlight, just inches away, it was twisting itself deeper into the dark corner. It looked tired. It looked like it was working 10 times harder than any other flower just to stay alive. "People think plants are simple," he said, his voice like the sound of dry leaves stepping on pavement. "They think a plant will always move toward what is good for it. But if a plant is started in the dark, it doesn't know what good is. It only knows what is familiar. It will crave the very shadows that are crushing its life out, because the open sun feels like a threat. It's not a flaw in the plant. It's a survival trick that went wrong." That poppy was a perfect picture of the human heart. Most people believe they're looking for happiness, but many are actually looking for what feels familiar, even if that familiarity hurts. We often find ourselves drawn to the very people who make us feel small, ignored, or invisible. We call it chemistry, or a spark. But Dr. Aris knew better. He knew that for many of us, that spark isn't the beginning of a fire. It's the sound of a short circuit. The mystery of the 44 thieves. In 1944, the world was a cold and dangerous place. London was still shaking from the sounds of falling bombs, and the streets were filled with children who had grown up in the middle of chaos. In a small clinic in the city, a man named John Bowlby was trying to solve a puzzle. He wasn't looking at the war outside. He was looking at a different kind of war happening inside the minds of young boys. Bowlby was a British psychologist who didn't fit in with the old-school thinkers of his time. Back then, most experts believed that if you gave a child food, clothes, and a roof over their head, they would be fine. They thought love was just a bonus, or a luxury. Bowlby suspected they were dead wrong. He believed that a child's bond with their mother was just as important as the air they breathed. To prove it, he started a study that would change the way we understand love forever. He gathered 44 teenagers who had been caught stealing. These weren't just kids who made a one-time mistake. They were juvenile thieves who seemed to have no guilt about what they had done. They were cold, distant, and hard to reach. Bowlby compared them to 44 other teenagers who had emotional problems but didn't steal. As Bowlby sat across from these boys in his quiet office, he didn't ask them why they took the money or the watches. He asked them about their mothers. He asked them about their earliest memories of being held, being left alone, or being sent away. He found something shocking. Out of the 44 thieves, 17 of them had been separated from their mothers for a long time before they were 5 years old. In the normal group, only 2 kids had experienced that kind of loss. But there was one specific group of thieves that haunted Bowlby. He called them the affectionless characters. These were the kids who seemed like they had no heart at all. Of the 14 boys in this group, 12 had suffered a major break in their connection with their mother in early childhood. Bowlby watched one boy sit in the chair, staring at the wall with eyes that looked like flat stones. The boy didn't care if he went to jail. He didn't care if his parents were crying in the hallway. He had learned very early on that reaching out for love was a waste of time. If the person you need most disappears, the pain is so big that the brain just shuts down the need center entirely. But for many others, the reaction was the opposite. Instead of shutting down, they became hyper-aware. They became like a person who has been starved for weeks. They could smell food from miles away, and they would do anything to get a crumb. This was the birth of the anxious style. It wasn't a choice. It was a biological scream for safety. Bowlby realized that these boys weren't bad. They were just survivors. Their brains had been wired in a world where love was inconsistent. To a child, being left alone isn't just sad. It feels like death. The brain records that fear and keeps it in a special file. Years later, when that child grows up and enters a relationship, the brain pulls that file out. It says, "Be careful. They might leave. Watch their face. Check their tone. Don't let them out of your sight." The myth of the bad taste in partners. There is a common story we tell ourselves when we end up in another painful relationship. We say, I just have bad taste, or I'm a magnet for jerks. We treat it like a weird hobby or a streak of bad luck. This is the first myth we have to bust. You do not have bad taste. You have a highly trained survival system that is doing exactly what it was taught to do. Imagine you grew up in a house where the smoke alarm went off every time someone made toast. At first, you'd be terrified. You'd run outside, heart pounding, looking for the fire. But after 5 years of this, you'd stop running. You might even start to associate the loud, piercing beep, beep, beep with the smell of breakfast. Eventually, a quiet house would feel strange to you. You might even feel uneasy if the alarm didn't go off. This is what happens in our romantic lives. If your early experiences taught you that love is a roller coaster, that it involves being ignored and then showered with affection, or being pushed away and then pulled back in, your brain starts to equate anxiety with attraction. When you meet someone who is stable, kind, and predictable, your brain doesn't see a good partner. It sees a broken smoke alarm. It thinks, this is too quiet, something is wrong, there's no spark. But when you meet someone who is inconsistent, someone who doesn't text back for 2 days, or who seems mysterious, which is often just another word for emotionally unavailable, your smoke alarm starts screaming. Your heart beats faster. You can't stop thinking about them. You feel a rush of energy. You tell your friends, I've never felt this way before. The chemistry is insane. The truth is that insane chemistry is often just your old childhood fear being triggered. Your brain recognizes the pattern if someone I need is pulling away, and it goes into high gear to try and fix it. You aren't in love with the person. You are in a high-stakes battle to stop the smoke alarm from ringing. You crave them because they represent a problem your brain is desperate to solve. We believe the myth that love should feel like a lightning bolt. Because of this, we ignore the people who feel like a warm blanket. We think the blanket is boring, while the lightning bolt is destiny. But lightning bolts aren't meant to be lived in. They are meant to strike and disappear, leaving nothing but scorched earth behind. The smoke alarm in the modern world, the biological system Bowlby discovered in 1944, is still alive inside you today. In fact, it has a name: the amygdala. This is a tiny almond-shaped part of your brain that acts as your internal security guard. Its only job is to look for threats. For someone with a secure attachment style, the security guard is pretty relaxed. He stays in his booth, reads a book, and only hits the alarm if there is a real visible fire. But for someone with an anxious attachment style, that security guard has been through a lot of trauma. He's jittery. He's had too much coffee. He's staring at the monitors with wide eyes, convinced that every shadow is a monster. In the modern world, this security guard doesn't have to worry about bombs or tigers. He worries about read receipts. When you send a text to someone you care about, and you see those 2 little blue checks appear, but no reply comes, the smoke alarm goes off. Within seconds, your body is flooded with cortisol, the stress hormone. Your chest feels tight. You might feel a drop in your stomach, like you're on a fast elevator. Your security guard is screaming. They saw it. They aren't replying. Why aren't they replying? Did I say something wrong? Are they with someone else? Are they bored of me? They're going to leave. This is the protest phase Bowlby described. Your brain is trying to force the other person to reconnect with you so the alarm will stop. You might send another text. You might check their Instagram to see if they are active. You might accidentally drive by their house. You are doing anything you can to put out the fire. The problem is that there usually isn't a fire. The other person might just be in a meeting, or taking a shower, or simply enjoying a moment of silence. But to your anxious brain, silence is the sound of abandonment. This is why we crave the people who crush us. Every time an inconsistent partner finally texts back, or finally gives us a hug, our brain gets a massive hit of dopamine. It's the same chemical a gambler gets when they finally win a hand of poker after losing for 3 hours. The relief feels so good that we mistake it for deep love. We become addicted to the cycle of the anxiety spike and the relief drop. We think we are chasing the person, but we are actually chasing the end of the panic. Sarah and the Spark. Sarah Jenkins sat in a corner booth at a coffee shop in Wicker Park, her fingers tapping a nervous rhythm on her paper cup. Across from her, Jenna was talking about a guy she had been seeing for 3 months. He's just so nice, Jenna said, smiling. He calls when he says he will. He's met my sister. I never have to wonder where I stand. Sarah felt a pang of something that felt like pity. though she tried to hide it. To her, Jenna's relationship sounded like a slow-motion movie of a person watching grass grow. Where was the excitement? Where was the will they won't they tension that made life feel vibrant? "That's great, Jen," Sarah said, her voice sounding a bit flat. "I just don't think I could do it. I need that spark, you know? That feeling where you meet someone and it's like the whole world shifts." Sarah was thinking about Mark. She had met him at a gallery opening 2 weeks ago. He was an architect with messy hair and a way of looking at her that made her feel like the only person in the room, until he looked away. And then she felt like she didn't exist at all. He had texted her at 2 a.m. on Tuesday, then disappeared for 3 days. Right now, as Jenna talked about her nice boyfriend, Sarah's phone was face down on the table. She was acutely aware of it. Every time someone else's phone buzzed in the shop, she felt a jolt in her ribs. "Sarah," Jenna said softly, leaning in, "you've been talking about Mark for 20 minutes, but you look like you're about to have a heart attack. You're shaking." "I'm just excited," Sarah insisted, though her stomach felt like it was full of cold stones. "He's just so mysterious. I feel like I'm constantly discovering new parts of him." Jenna looked at her friend for a long moment. "Are you discovering new parts of him, or are you just trying to figure out if he actually likes you?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to defend Mark, to talk about his busy schedule and his fear of intimacy that she was sure she could heal. But the words got stuck. She realized that since the moment she met Mark, she hadn't felt peaceful once. She had felt high, she had felt low, and she had felt frantic. But she hadn't felt safe. She looked down at her coffee. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder, is the spark I keep looking for just the sound of my own panic? The realization was terrifying. If the spark wasn't love, then everything Sarah knew about romance was wrong. It meant that all the movies she loved, all the songs she listened to, and all the electric moments she had chased were actually just signs of her smoke alarm going off. She looked at her phone. It remained dark. The mysterious silence that she usually found so attractive suddenly felt heavy and exhausting. She thought about the poppy in Dr. Eris's garden, twisting itself into the dark corner because it didn't know how to live in the light. The first step toward the light. The path to healing starts with a very difficult truth. Your gut feeling is currently broken. Most people say, trust your gut. But if you have an anxious attachment style, your gut is the one telling you to run toward the fire and away from the safety. Your gut is the one that tells you that a kind person is boring and an unavailable person is the one. To change this, you have to stop acting like a detective and start acting like a scientist. A detective looks for clues to prove their theory, e.g., he didn't use an emoji. He must be mad. A scientist looks at the data without bias. The data says that consistent love feels quiet. It says that true intimacy isn't a heart-pounding chase. It's a calm conversation. This is the empowerment part of the journey. You aren't a victim of your bad taste. You are a person with a very sensitive biological alarm system that needs to be recalibrated. You can learn to hear the beep, beep, beep of your anxiety and say, "Oh, that's just my smoke alarm. There is no fire here. I don't need to send that 10th text. I don't need to check his Instagram. I can just sit here in the quiet." It's not easy. It feels like trying to breathe underwater at first. Your brain will tell you that if you don't protest, you will be forgotten. It will tell you that the silence will swallow you whole. But if you stay in the quiet, if you refuse to chase the crush, something amazing happens. The alarm eventually stops on its own. The cortisol drains out of your system. Your heart rate slows down. And in that new space of calm, you might finally be able to see the nice people who have been standing in the sunlight all along, waiting for you to notice them. Sarah left the coffee shop that day without checking her phone. As she walked toward the train, she felt the familiar urge to pull it out, to see if Mark had finally validated her existence with a "hey." But she kept her hands in her pockets. She felt the drop in her stomach, but she didn't try to catch it. She just let herself feel the drop. She was starting to realize that the crush she had been feeling wasn't love at all. It was just the weight of the stone bench she had been growing under. And for the first time in her life, she was curious about what it might feel like to just stand up and walk into the sun. The journey wasn't over. In fact, for Sarah, it was just beginning. She still had to figure out how to stop the overthinking loop and how to handle the next time her smoke alarm went off. But the mirror had cracked. She could no longer pretend that her pain was passion. Somewhere in London, 80 years ago, John Bowlby had looked into the eyes of a thief and seen a lonely child. Sarah was finally starting to see that same child in her own reflection, and she was finally ready to stop punishing her for being hungry. Chapter 2. Attachment Theory. The Invisible Blueprint of Love. Mary Ainsworth stepped off the plane into the thick, humid air of Uganda in 1954. She wasn't there for a vacation. She was there to prove the most powerful men in psychology wrong. At that time, the experts believed something very cold about human babies. They thought a baby only loved its mother because she provided food. To them, a mother was basically a walking vending machine. They told parents not to pick up their children too much. They said that too much affection would make a child weak or spoiled. Mary didn't believe a word of it. She spent the next year traveling to small villages, sitting on dirt floors, and watching 26 families go about their daily lives. She watched mothers work in the fields with their babies tied to their backs. She watched what happened when a mother got up to stir a pot of food, and how the baby's eyes followed her every move. Mary wasn't looking at how much milk the babies drank. She was looking at something much more invisible, the bond. She noticed something that changed history. Some babies were calm when their mothers were around. They would crawl away, explore a bit, and then look back to make sure mom was still there. These babies were secure. But other babies were different. Some were constantly worried. They wouldn't leave their mother's side. If she moved an inch, they panicked. These were the insecure babies. Mary realized the difference wasn't about how much food the babies got. It was about how sensitive the mother was. Did she notice when the baby was scared? Did she pick the baby up when it cried? Or did she ignore it? This year in Uganda was the birth of attachment theory. It proved that the way we are loved as children creates a blueprint in our minds. That blueprint tells us if the world is a safe place or a place where we have to fight to be noticed. The wire mother and the soft touch. While Mary was in Africa, another scientist named Harry Harlow was doing a heartbreaking experiment in a lab in Wisconsin. He wanted to know what mattered more to a living creature, food or comfort. He took baby rhesus monkeys and put them in a cage with two fake mothers. The first fake mother was made of hard, cold wire. She had a bottle of milk attached to her chest. She provided the food. The second fake mother was made of soft, warm cloth. She had no food at all. If the experts of the 1950s were right, the monkeys should have spent all their time with the wire mother. After all, she was the one keeping them alive. But that's not what happened. The baby monkeys would run to the wire mother, drink the milk as fast as they could, and then immediately jump back to the cloth mother. They would cling to her for 18 hours a day. When they were scared by a loud noise, they didn't run to the food. This experiment was a wake-up call for the world. It showed that contact comfort is a biological need, just like air or water. For an anxious person, this is a vital piece of the puzzle. Your need for closeness isn't a weakness or a flaw. It is a survival instinct that is hardwired into your brain. When you feel that desperate urge to text someone or to be near them, it is your inner monkey looking for the cloth mother. You aren't being too much. You are being human. The map in your mind. Everything Mary Ainsworth and Harry Harlow discovered leads to one big idea: the internal working model. Think of it like a map you carry in your head. When you are a baby, your brain is like a sponge. It looks at how your parents treat you and builds a map of how relationships work. If your parents were consistent, meaning they showed up when you cried and were mostly kind, your map says, people are reliable. I am safe. This is the secure blueprint. You grow up believing that if you have a problem, you can ask for help and you will get it. You don't worry about people leaving you because your map shows that people generally stay. But if your parents were inconsistent, sometimes they were loving and sometimes they were cold or distracted, your map looks different. It says, people are unpredictable. I have to work hard to keep them close. This is the anxious blueprint. Because you never knew which version of your parent you were going to get, you learned to be a detective. You started watching their faces for any sign of anger. You started performing to get their attention. This map doesn't disappear just because you grow up. You carry it into your office, your friendships, and especially your romantic relationships. If your map is the anxious one, you will always be looking for the smoke alarm. You will expect people to pull away, so you stay on high alert, watching for the tiniest change in a partner's tone of voice or the speed of their text replies. Sarah's